I think the stars had to align where someone had almost unlimited capital and could get to scale very quickly. Elon has done that with Starlink. I do think there will be a space economy at some point when you start talking about cargo and logistics and all that stuff is out there, where you're just going to see a lot more unmanned surface, underwater, and unmanned aero vehicles that all rely on secure communications.
Today, we are recording from Satellite 2025 and have in person, in the flesh, Tim Winter, CEO of iDirect Gov and a veteran in the satellite comms world. Tim started his career as a Navy P-3 mission commander, tracking Russian submarines and gathering intelligence across the globe. After his military service, Tim brought his hands-on experience to the private sector, where he now leads a company specializing in secure SATCOMs for defense applications. His team develops the anti-jam and anti-interference tech that's essential on today's battlefields. With the SAT industry facing major disruption from players like Starlink and shifting geopolitical realities, Tim offers unique insights on how multi-orbit solutions are reshaping defense communications. Welcome to Mission Critical, Tim.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Catherine. It's a great week in DC, getting the satellite industry together. I've done this show for years, or I guess going on decades now, and it's a lot of fun. It's a tight-knit industry, and it's good seeing old friends and new friends. So it's a fantastic week, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Absolutely. So this year, what would make Satellite 2025 the best ever show if something were to happen?
Great question. There's a lot of open dialogue and open discourse between all the industry players now. As you might know, there's been a lot of disruption in the satellite space over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's really caused folks to be more creative, act with more speed, and collaborate more. So I think the level of collaboration between partners, those that used to compete against each other, but now collaborate because the industry and businesses dictated to do so, which is a good thing. And so I think that's continuing into this year. There's been a lot of great conversations, a lot of great dialogue as folks think through, what does this industry look like 12 months from now, 3 years, 5 years from now? And I think the disruption and change will continue going forward.
That seems to be a major theme of every speaker that I've gone and see, that disruption piece. And we can't talk about disruption without talking about Starlink. I feel like the conversation really has pivoted to the how are you going to compete with Starlink in terms of how to differentiate your business. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's those, Starlink, I think more disruption, more change has occurred in the industry in the last 2 or 3 years than did so in the previous 20 years. For many years, LEO constellations were tried, failed. The business case is very challenging. I think the stars had to align where someone had almost unlimited capital, had a launch capability, and could get to scale very quickly to make the business case work and close. And Elon has done that with Starlink. I think it is, the rising tide is lifting all boats. Like I said, it's leading to folks, traditional satellite owner operators and ground segment providers like iDirect to think differently about their value proposition and what they need to bring to market and how they can differentiate to Starlink. It's not monolithic. Starlink is incredibly capable. The technology is fantastic. Kuiper is coming on its tails. There are other LEO constellations coming as well. That's okay. But different verticals require different capabilities. Maritime might have a unique requirement. Starlink, it fits in well with maritime, enterprise, direct to home, et cetera. I focus on government defense. They have different requirements, different needs, different risk management. And so while most of my activities with GEO satellites now, I think GEO does stay in the gov defense space. Like I said, they manage risk, use all orbits. And I don't think that's going to change. Starlink will be part of the solution, but it won't be the entire solution going forward in the gov defense sector.
So we've seen a lot of new market entrants, and I'm hearing what you're saying is, hey, to compete, you've got to be in a niche they're not. What advice would you give to senior execs that are doing a VC-funded space startup right now?
Yeah, good question, especially in the VC. And VC funding has run hot and cold in the space industry now for, I'd say 5-7 years, actually longer than that. But space is also nuanced, and I do think there will be a space economy at some point when you start talking about cargo and logistics, and whether it be Wi-Fi on the moon, we'll be mining on the moon, potentially. All that stuff is out there. Problem with space is hard, right? And space requires patience around capital. Now, obviously, I'm in the SATCOM space, and like I said, there's besides Starlink, besides the LEO constellation, there's been more evolutionary change in satellite communications, which has been good. At iDirect Government, we focus on sort of secure applications, anti-jam, anti-interference, low probability of intercept, sort of special. I do refer to them as a niche. There's not tremendous scale there, so it doesn't really interest Elon too much, or Amazon. I don't think they'll delve into unique security applications. But we're developing those for satellite communications, and we're taking those applications into, I'll say, adjacent markets, HF radios, UHF, outside traditional broadband SATCOM. So I think going back to your question around VC and funding, like I said, patience, the burn rate is high in space. Space is hard. Look, even SpaceX is blowing up starships, right? And on occasion, and so it's hard. So understanding that, I think is a requirement that the VCs want to have a successful venture into the space industry.
And you're saying, look at those niches that require high levels of customization that may not have the monster margins because they're not going to attract the big dogs.
Yeah, I think the margins can be there. I think that the question is how big is the addressable market, right? And so we have equipment and let's say 28 ministries of defense throughout the world. iDirect is sort of a staple, a known technology that provides secure satellite communications. Some of the security features sets that I develop, are they needed in maritime? Are they needed in enterprise or direct to home? No, they're not. Basic security can work fine in those verticals. So that's why I said it's nuanced. Will Starlink, take over is it global domination and they're going to take over every vertical? No, it's, as I look in the Gov Defense, there are many different mission sets. Starlink fits in very well with MWR, morale, welfare, for the soldiers, sailors, and airmen to email home via Gmail, or they run their Netflix. Starlink's a perfect solution. If you're doing higher level securities and you need additional security around networks, another solution is probably required.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about LEO at this conference today. And I had a senior level candidate call me and say, Catherine, I want out. GEO's dead. What would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, and I don't think GEO is dead. I do, like I said, it gets down to the addressable market. Look, there's Starlink out there, a large global LEO constellation. Kuiper's coming, that will also be one. China wants to put 3 LEO constellations in space, each the size of Starlink. Now maybe 1 or 2 of those come to fruition. So LEO constellations work when they have scale. So they all have to gobble up so many customers. But I do think, especially in my vertical, so I think that could have different effects in maritime, enterprise, direct to consumer. I think LEO fits in very well there. My customer needs to manage risk. They need to operate on multi-orbit. They know when the shooting starts, some of the satellite space assets will become inoperable, whether it be through kinetic attack or non-kinetic attack, or they'll be disabled. Our adversaries know where every one of our satellites are. So no secret there, but they need to manage risk.
When the shooting starts, it's got to work.
It's got to work. It's got to work. And so there's a different risk profile for my end user. It's not, the U.S. government per se. I know things might be a little different over the last couple of weeks, but they're not running a P&L, right? They're not, what they have to do is mission accomplishment is where they have to focus. And that requires, you hear redundancy and resiliency and words like that over and over again, because it is important. They have to know a lot of our weapon systems, a lot of our systems rely on communications, secure communications, GPS, PNT capabilities, a bunch of other space capabilities that really are integral to everything that we do across the world. So the risk profile has to be different. And that's why I think GEO is not dead, especially in government defense. There are some new, smaller GEO, low-cost GEO technologies or startups that are coming to bear. And I think there is some runway there because GEO does need to lower the cost of delivered service. but that's coming. But yeah, there's no doubt about it in the gov defense space that multi-orbit is here to stay.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned political environment first. We are here in DC, and somebody just told me, Tesla sales are way down in Germany. Somebody else said, hey, given the climate right now, there's this huge opportunity for international players that want to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that right now, this being an opportunity? How would you address that?
Yeah, just when, like I said, we talked about the mass amount of disruption, and this will be studied for years to come. The material amount of disruption and the speed that it happened has really been unbelievable. So it's disruptive, a lot of change, a lot of fast change. And now you have this geopolitical wrapper around it. We have Doge, we have Starlink, we have Elon that is operating inside the Beltway now. Just recently over the last 72 hours, whether it be Carlos Slim in Latin America, whether it be Italy, whether it be Canada, whether it be, everything that's going on in Ukraine, folks are rethinking their commitment to Starlink.
People are shopping.
Well, to go back to my point, and then what does that mean? So Starlink needs scale to operate. They need mass amounts of users. And now you have, I think folks are at least considering, their security needs. Hey, we can't, operate on a network and a system where we think somebody could turn it off at any given time. So, I don't know what's going to come in the next 24 hours. I think the mood in Washington is, I think there's a lot of change in Washington. I think the dust will settle. Give it 60, 90 days, things will settle out a little bit. But now we have this geopolitical wrinkle that is also changing. I think changing SATCOM, and I think it's going to be good for. You saw Eutelsat stock over the last 72 days or 72 hours. It almost looks like a meme stock on a 500%.
They just announced a $12 billion deal.
Yeah, and so they, like I said, it's leading to opportunity for some of the traditional geo satellite owner operators, whether it be Intelsat, SES, Eutelsat, Inmarsat, and Viasat, if you will. So I think it's good, and I think it's reminding, especially sovereign needs. So nation states and sovereign needs that hey, we need to consider more than price and technology. There's now a geopolitical personality that's involved.
And that's something that was never part of the conversation before. It was price and maybe, like you said, multi-orbit is this going to work in terms of the assurance space. But that's a whole new entrance. And I feel like, particularly at the show, I haven't heard a whole lot of direct questions about that. And maybe we're all just kind of still dipping our toe in the water and waiting to see what tomorrow holds as well.
Yeah, just interesting days. I mean, who thought? I'm trying to think of another example where there was a product out there where people were, you mentioned the Tesla sales are down considerably. There's people throwing trash at Tesla cars. I saw actually this morning. So,
do you have
this
one?
Is sort of, I don't have one. But
you're not going to tell me now.
But it's just.
I'll say I wanted one.
Yeah, it's once again, technology is phenomenal, but there's now this thing out there, and so like I said, interesting days. I think it's got to settle out. The Doge is a new concept in the government. How that affects, it is starting to affect certain things that we're doing iDirect government as we're running through hitting some speed bumps from a contracting perspective, just as the Pentagon sort of gets used to the new normal. And I think
tell me more.
Yeah, so it's we had an opportunity that we were getting ready to execute on a contract, but two government contracting officers took the 8-month, I think, early retirement. I don't know what the final term was for it, but early retirement. And so those desks are vacant.
We don't call it velo.
So I can call those desks, but there's nobody there to answer. So, and there's no capability backfill. So now we gotta go towards approach this need through a different contract vehicle.
So a deal that was inked is all of a sudden not.
Yeah, it's and then we're in the final leg, and so it's. I think we'll see a few more speed bumps like that. I don't think it's going to be super material at the end of the day. I think. A continuing resolution. The government's also could shut down here in another 2 days, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll have a continuing resolution for the rest of the fiscal year, which should provide some stability. Actually, defense spending in that bill, I think is up, is an increase. So we'll see. I don't know what the next 24 hours will bring. It seems like, just between 4 meetings yesterday, there was 50% of tariffs, on Canadian steel, and then it was no tariffs, then no tariffs by the end of the day. So I don't know who's keeping score, but it's a dynamic time in Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So about dynamic times. How does that experience shape how you manage and lead?
So my first introduction to SATCOM was in the Navy. I was a P3 mission commander. Our primary mission back in the day was dropping sonobuoys, chasing Russian submarines throughout the world, and capturing their acoustic signatures. A lot of fun. That was my first introduction to SATCOM and all sorts of beyond line of sight communication. I then stayed in the reserves for another 17 years, and actually my last orders were to the BAMS program, which was a large drone. I would sit in a box in the East Coast. Drone would be halfway around the world. So we relied on, SATCOM was go or no go criteria. In other words, we were not flying the mission if we didn't. And we had multiple SATCOM links on that. And this is a very large drone, wingspans larger than 737. So
wow,
a strategic asset, almost like a low-hanging satellite, if you will. But that mission did not go if our SATCOM links were down. And so once again, going back to my point, and especially as a battlefield gets more and more, let's say, robotic or unmanned, right? We're seeing some incredible things in Ukraine. There's it's obviously a terrible evolution, but you're seeing some very old and traditional warfare techniques coupled with the drone technology, and what the Ukrainians are doing with help with partners is really sort of defining a few elements of the modern battlefield, where you're just going to see a lot more unmanned surface, unmanned underwater vehicles, and unmanned aero vehicles that all rely on secure communications. And so it's an interesting problem set, but the change is once again is so rapid. What's happening in the defense industry base and the battlefield. So that initial perspective as a user and an operator on SATCOM gives me great perspective now, especially with our mission set and how we at iDirect Government support our customers. We know that the SATCOM, to your point, when the shooting starts, it has to work. These guys and gals need it on the front line, and so we never miss a chance to lean forward and help them out and make sure everything works as advertised.
Yeah. You mentioned Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's another geopolitical hotbed.
Yeah.
Tell me from a CEO's perspective of a SAT company, how you plan. And I don't quite know if plan's the right word, given all the changes right now, but plan for some of that innovation and disruption that we've seen there.
Yeah, and it's hard, we talk about planning for disruption, planning for innovation, right? You should always have innovation, disruption, and change is commonplace. That is the normal. How do you plan for it can be a challenge. Once again, Ukraine has been a perfect example of how secure SATCOM. In the early days of Ukraine, I think there was a Viasat network and a Starlink that both had some cyber issues and some vulnerabilities. And so once again, it highlighted the need we do have secure SATCOM networks operating in Ukraine. But it sort of reminds you that hey, the security has to be there. Once again, these networks have to work. Adversaries, on the cyber front, as far as getting into networks, it seems like the offensive guys are always one step ahead of the defensive. So we have to continue to innovate. We have to, with regard to security, to the anti-jam, anti-interference, low probability of intercept, all the things that I mentioned. It has to be there because we have to try and keep pace, at least, with those that are trying to take an offensive, attack mindset into these networks. And so Ukraine, once again, it has highlighted that. It's and we're seeing it real time. And there's a lot of technology that is being deployed in that area of operations, and it's interesting. It's interesting to watch. There's a lot of developed technology that is going right to the battlefield that we talk about some of the new companies that are popping up, not new, but Anduril, Palantir, Shield AI, companies that are doing incredible things very quickly. And it's a lot of software, it's a lot of AI, and it's really impressive to watch.
Those are the three you're most excited about right now?
There's others.
Besides iDirect.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's the approach to the defense industry base. Of course, we have the tier with the Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, great American companies, and but these newer companies that have access to different capital and can move at a different pace. It's really impressive because they're developing things.
Yes, candidates where they want to work. Those are usually the top three too.
Yeah, and it's it's incredible. It's what Anduril is going to be building in Ohio. It's really a sort of next generation defense industry base. Not that the traditional tier one primes are going anywhere, but to that point, we're looking at instead of having just an inventory of $300 million Joint Strike Fighters. Okay, you do need strategic assets like that. But the portfolio has to include all the way from a strategic asset, let's say a B-2 or a Joint Strike Fighter, all the way down to an attritable $400 drone and everything in between. And know that, hey, some of these assets are going to be used once, just part of a swarm. They're not coming back. Off you go. And then, like I said, we have strategic assets that we choose differently. But
$400 drone. Shoot, I want one of those.
But that whole portfolio, once again, communication until some of those companies are working on AI that would alleviate the need for multiple communication links into the battlefield. But like I said, I think the importance of secure communication links in the battlefield, and that's why the redundancy and resiliency is all super important, will continue. That's just, it's a must. Yeah.
So you'd mentioned a mission that did not go. There's very few people, I think, in this world that have not had comms while flying a fighter jet or a massive drone. Yeah. What's the feeling like when it's not there or it's not what you expect?
Yeah, that's good. And there were times in the drone, this was a Global Hawk drone, that when we lose comms link, so we put a mission profile into the drone. So if we lose comms link with it, it has a return to base profile. So once again, it's mission go, no go. So all that intelligence that we are going to gather on that mission for the end user who is engaged, that goes away. Communication links go down, the bird comes home. And so it's incredibly important because stuff is happening in real time, and there, our soldiers, sailors, and airmen that are out there that rely on that information, that intelligence to operate, and it's incredibly important. Like I said, it's not a P&L thing. It's about mission, and it's about taking care of our folks out there and enabling the mission. So. It's happened. We've lost communication links, and like I said, I've seen it multiple times. It's go home criteria.
Yeah,
bird flies home. That's it.
In terms of what's next, what are you most excited about? First, with iDirect for the next few months, and then secondly, I'll ask you about the industry in general. Yeah,
good question. So with iDirect, like I said, we're very we have pivoted. iDirect, the industry's changed. And a couple things have happened. One is we came home from Afghanistan, right? For 20 years, we were involved in almost building a nation in Afghanistan. A lot of our equipment was deployed to Afghanistan. We came home, and so the profile changed, right? If you want to talk about addressable market, if you want to think about it that way, those programs, the many thousands of terminals that we had in country and hubs and the demand was no longer there, right? We got on planes and we came home, and I'm glad we're home. And so you've got a couple options. You can, sort of stick your head in the sand and hope that some market develops that has equal demand, or you get to pivot the organization. And we've changed the organization. We've gotten involved in development programs. We're performing on developing, like I said, some next gen modem capabilities that are bringing multiple waveforms into a single SATCOM kit, and we're very excited about that. And then we're pivoting. We're diversifying the portfolio. Like I said, we're taking some of our secure software feature sets and bringing them into adjacent markets, whether it be HF radios, whether it be UHF, I talk about multi-orbit in SATCOM, really every orbit to include, I call it orbit zero, which is terrestrial, HF, some older lines of communication. They're going to be needed, especially in Indo-PACOM. If things heat up in Indo-PACOM, all these communication capabilities are going to be needed. So diversify the portfolio set, get involved in programs of record, development programs of record, which we are right now. We've had some success with. And so very excited about that. And then going to adjacent markets. So that's iDirect government. Very excited about our position there. The industry, so we have Starlink, Kuiper is coming, and they'll be part, like I said, the U.S. government is looking at all these services. They're trying to figure out how to use them all. Our end users digesting all the technology as well. Technology is developing so fast, the government has to absorb and try to understand this technology at an incredible pace. And so I'll try to look 3 years, 5 years out strategically. And, the government really needs almost a manager of managed services. They're going to use Kuiper. They're going to use Starlink, okay? The light speed from Telesat will probably be there as well. Some things that we're developing, though, is, okay, besides those, you can have this single SATCOM kit that can, I can bring you 4 waveforms. You can operate on multiple different space assets. Ease of use. Remember, this has to work with an 18-year-old soldier that's going outside the wire. And, what we can't do with all these services is send out that soldier with, hey, here's 5 different SATCOM kits and 8 different terminals and, for that interoperability nature and go at it. So we're working
I'm
on...
imagining an 18-year-old with a giant backpack right now.
Right. And of course, they want everything. Wait a minute. I'll just, can it be my iPhone and off we go? And
hook it up to my iPhone.
Yeah, and that's coming. Direct to device is coming as well. So I think more change is coming. Can't stand still. You can't be static because Starlink, those folks aren't going to. They're dynamic. They're continually improving, which, like I said, which is good for the industry, good for satellite communications. But you have to move fast as well. So I'm excited about it.
What advice? Final question. Would you give your former self just as you're coming out of the military?
Ooh.
Transitioning veteran.
Yeah. Good question. And I try to help some that are going through the transitioning process now.
It's a big change.
It's a very big change. And it's, the military is a way of operating. And there's some stuff that is translatable. There's some stuff that is different. What I try to tell folks is, hey, your first job out of the military is not going to be your last. So get out, network, find mentors. Mentors are incredibly important. And I was always fortunate to have great mentors along my path during my transition and ever since I've been out. And I think it's incredibly important because you do some true learning, have that growth mindset. But take with you, like I said, the positive attributes of the military and then the discipline and the servant leadership and that dedication to the customer, because that translates to every industry. And if you understand that and have the right, empathy towards the customer, doing the right thing, you'll succeed. But like I said, that first job is probably not going to last. Find those mentors, stick to them, learn, and get after it.
Tim, I will let you get back to the show. This was so much fun.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time. This is a lot of fun.